So I think I spent about 3 hours on the range, and there was a little cafe in the range as well. There was a little area where you could go get a cup of coffee or a drink or something like that and just sit down and meet other shooters. And the good thing that I liked about that gun range was they had two range masters on the range, basically walked behind you armed, and these guys would tell you, if you turn your weapon on somebody, I'm going to shoot you, because there had been occasions where crazy people had went in there, and just all of a sudden spazzed out and killed people on that gun range, just started shooting people, for no apparent reason, and they sometimes, unfortunately, were, veterans that had, PTSD or this kind of thing. And again, I wasn't really, into the knowledge of PTSD or really what it was back then. So I never really looked into it, to be honest. I was kind of ignorant in that respect, and I made a mental note of myself to start, learning about this type of stuff and learning about cognitive behavior and schizophrenia and all these other things, and that would help me later on when I went into the medical field, when I went into being a paramedic. And because psychology and all this stuff goes hand in hand with medicine. The thing with doctors and hospitals these days, they don't really treat the cause. They just give you medications to mask everything, and I was to go through that myself at a later stage in life as well, and I went down that road, and the bit of knowledge that I had in those fields helped me immensely. I was able to understand more and able to understand the lack of treatment that people really were not being given, and my whole world suddenly just opened up. But that will be further down the line. So had a good time on the range, came back, did my workout, and Kitty was just curled up on the bed, and she pricked her little head up, because I would always scratch the door to let her know I was coming in. I just wouldn't blatantly open the door, because a few times she did jump, she did get scared, so I would scratch the door, tip the door with my fingertips just to let her know that I was at the door and stuff. And I would then come in and she'd be all excited and stuff, and she'd run to the end of the bed and she'd run and she'd jump up and I'd catch her, and she was always purring and rubbing her face on me and so just showing affection. Made my heart really happy, and make me smile just with this big Cheshire cat shit-eating grin, and I felt like a little kid. To be loved so much by a little animal, and people say animals are dumb, but they're not. They're far better behaved, with far more understanding than we have, and they don't fuck you over for money. So, and she just made me smile a lot, and it was great to know that she was going to be in the room when I got back again. So, again, just another normal, boring day. Got home, had something to eat, which was the usual routine. Had a shower, air dried, then dried myself off, changed a t-shirt and a pair of shorts and a pair of socks, house socks as people would call them. It's a pair of house socks, and then I would give the little cat a little shower, a little clean and stuff, and blow it with a hairdryer. God. I used to see people do that on the television, and vets, when I used to go to the pet store and stuff, they would say, oh, are you cleaning her, and dry her with a hairdryer, and they loved the hairdryer, and I was like, fucking hell, so I started doing that, and she just absolutely loved it, so she'd be flea'd and ticked, and wormed and and all that type of stuff, and she was well taken care of and she was loved. So yeah, that was it. The day passed, I got back in again. Andy popped downstairs, had a coffee with me around 9:30 at night time. He looked a bit better, I could tell that Andy had been crying because his eyes were red, and and I didn't look him directly in the face. I just, how you doing, Andy? Yeah, how was the gun range? Oh, it was great. What did you shoot? Glock and an AR-50. He's like, oh, you need to try this and you need to try that. And I'm like, I'm okay with a Glock and a thing, So Andy was saying, you can take my, my 911 if you want to. And I'm like, no, mate, that's, no, you can take it if you want to, Carl. It's just gathering dust and all this type of stuff. And Andy had a collection of guns. He had a Ruger and he had a Taurus. you know, Beretta and all this type of stuff. He had 8 or 9 guns. He had a couple of rifles. I'd love to have taken his rifles, but trusting, you know, somebody with a $2,000 rifle or something like that can be, you know, a bit much. And I never, even though he offered, I never bothered. So I'd always rent something. My money was stacking up. I was making money hand over fist. Dave told me that he had 5,000 US saved for me just from the rental of my boat. He said, "I'm sorry, Cole." He says, "You're probably going to be pissed at me," but he says, I've had to use your scuba gear. You know, I says, "Dave, listen, mate. You know, fill your boots. You know, if you need to rent it, rent it." He goes, "If I rent it, Cole, I'll keep you the money." And I'm like, "No, fucking hell, don't be worried about that. No, Cole, it's your gear. I'll rent the money for you. You know, out for you, keep you the money." So every time he rented out the scuba gear for a 2-tank dive, I got 25 US. So most days from my scuba gear, I was making, you know, roughly $60 because it would be 2 dives in the afternoon, 2 dives in the morning, and a night dive. So, you know, Dave was collecting the money for me as well, you know, and so that was really good of him. You know, Dave could have kept that money. He wouldn't have had to tell me. You know what I mean? I wouldn't have had a clue. But, you know, Dave was neither a thief nor a liar. And, you know, that's one of the reasons why I love David so much. You know, he had integrity, and he had, you know, he had a code, and I learned that from him. He was just a brilliant person. So I had stacks of money. Dave was saying, "Oh, don't worry, Cole. When we come up," he goes, "you'll be spending that money on me in the titty bar." So he was looking forward to come up and having some boobies rubbed in his face and, you know, just go crazy up the titty bar. I'd never been to one, so I didn't have a clue what they're going to be like, but I was soon to experience it with him and Dick. And yeah, so yeah, Andy came down, had a coffee, you know, talking about Key Largo, Key West, Key Marathon, and all these other keys that were down there. And when we came back, when we would be coming back from Bermuda, Andy and I would be doing a 2-week trip, basically down in the Keys, and it would be, you know, if we got to Key West or we got to Cat Island and Eleuthera, which were further down, you know, and you had to basically get there. I think by ferry or maybe a little plane. You know, we'd be going to those places as well. It had places Andy had been to but hadn't been to for a while, and Andy now wanted to expand his business, and the death of Tom and the sadness that Andy was going through and the loss of his friend, Andy threw himself into his work, and his girlfriend, the loss of his girlfriend as well. And Andy was going down a deep rabbit hole that, you know, was pretty hard for him to get back out of. So he was throwing himself into this work because the guy was totally miserable, and he was hiding all that. He didn't drink. I'd never seen Andy drink an alcoholic beverage in the whole time that I was working with Andy or was living in the house with Andy. Not once did Andy open a bottle of beer or a vodka or a whiskey or anything. He was just totally teetotal, but you know, he suffered in other ways. You know, he started to lose weight. I'd noticed he'd got thinner. You know, his clothes had started to hang him a bit more. He didn't seem to want to come and eat with me, you know, hardly anymore. And I would always knock on the door and say, "Andy, come on, let's go get something to eat. Let's go to Kenny Rogers. Let's go get a pizza." No, I ate earlier on, and he didn't. You know what I mean? And I couldn't force him. You know, he had to go through this process of missing, you know, the people that he loved, and it was a difficult time for him. All I could do was, you know, check that he was okay, you know, and do the jobs that he asked me to do, basically. And it was tough seeing Andy that way. It was quite a difficult thing for me to see on a daily basis. Sometimes we hit a wall, or we go down a rabbit hole, and for some people there's no coming back from it. You know, they go deeper and deeper, and you know, it's very difficult to see that. And again, that would be something that I would experience, you know, later on again in my life as well. You know, we all have different experiences with pain and grief and loss and mourning and acceptance. You know, we all have a process that we have to go through, and for some people it's, you know, it's one of those things that never goes away.